everyone, and welcome back to Social Butterfly. I'm just going to jump right into today's episode. I've got some notes here. I've got my laptop because I wanted to be really purposeful with what I wanted to say about today's topic. There's no perfect way to say anything really, but it's just something that has really been on my mind lately, really been taking up a lot of space in my brain, and I just wanted to make sure that I had intentionality behind it when I'm saying what I'm saying. So I prepared a little bit more today. And I should note that I'm not nervous to talk about this, like for fear of polarizing an audience or anything like that, because if you can watch the way that things are happening in our country right now and think that it is right and humane, then I don't know what to tell you. Regardless of if something is the law or not, all people deserve to be treated with dignity and respect and decency. And I said at the very beginning of this podcast, when I started this podcast in episode 1, that human connection is my favorite part of the human experience. And that goes for connection in the hard times as well. I would even argue that's when it's most important to feel connected to each other, is when we see hardship or injustice. That's part of the human experience, is being there for one another. So what I mean more so and being intentional about what I want to say today is because I didn't want to center myself too much in a much larger, more important issue that is largely not about me. In regards to that, I'm going to link some resources in the description of this episode to hopefully inform and educate and spread factual information about what is going on. But something about all of this, and when I say all of this, let me be clear, I'm talking about specifically the ICE raids that are happening and the way in which they are happening. Something about all of it that's really stirred up a sense of helplessness and confusion and frustration deeper than the basic level of human empathy and compassion that we all should be having right now. And I think that something has kind of been stirred up in me because I always struggle knowing for myself that one little decision that is not so far removed from me could have changed the entire trajectory of my life. And essentially I wouldn't exist as I do now. And my lived experience could be the lived experience that immigrants are facing right now. And I know that that is a really huge hypothetical. I'm aware of that. And when we're talking in a broad sense, that is true for all of us, right? That one small decision somewhere along the line from some ancestors, we wouldn't be who we are right now. But more specifically, for me, it brings up a lot of confusion about my sense of identity given my race. And if you don't know me, or maybe if you do and maybe we've just never talked about it, I am biracial. I'm Hispanic, and more specifically, I'm half Mexican from my father's side. With the really limited information I have about this on his side, I know that what I've been told is his biological parents brought him to the United States, and he was put up for adoption, and he was adopted by a white family. So when I sit and think about all that just in the big picture sort of thing, it's kind of a big pill to swallow, because essentially that's a whole 50% of my genetic makeup that I have absolutely no knowledge of medical history. There are probably people walking around this earth right now that I am blood related to, and I am never going to know that. But the other part of this that really tends to send me into a spiral is that whenever controversial issues, and I'm using controversial lightly because human rights shouldn't be controversial, but unfortunately that's what it is right now. Whenever controversial issues concerning the Hispanic or Latino community come up, I have a little bit of an identity crisis, because on one hand, yes, that is my race, but on the other hand, that is not my ethnicity. And there's a difference between the two. If you don't know, race is all about physical features. It categorizes people based on physical features, and it's kind of a social construct, but that is a conversation for a different time. But ethnicity is based on a shared heritage, a shared culture, a shared language. And while being Hispanic is 50% of me, the Mexican culture is 0% of me. And I was raised in a predominantly white family. I say predominantly only because my brother is also half Mexican, but other than like the two of us, we're in a white family with white cultures, white customs. And growing up, I would say my race was more at the forefront of who I was, because I'm from a small, again, predominantly white town in the Midwest, where I was one of maybe 5 kids in my grade, maybe a dozen kids in the whole school at the time of color. And I really struggle with the fact of even calling myself a person of color, because I am a white passing person of color, and that comes with a lot of privilege. Like, if I didn't tell you that I was half Mexican, you wouldn't know. And when I was a kid, though, that was something that made me stand out, right? It was something that I felt made me unique or interesting, and different, and so it really became a part of who I was. And looking back on that now, a lot of my experience with that was very much littered with microaggressions. And I don't fault anybody for that, because number one, I was making the jokes too. And number two, it was something that made me different. So I talked about it a lot. It became a big part of me because I made it a big part of me. And, we didn't know better at the time. And I truly feel like I know that's not an excuse, but I really feel like now when I look back and I'm able to identify something as a microaggression or something that might have been a little racist, it truly just came from a place of ignorance rather than a place of hate. But I digress. That is not my point here. My point mainly is that I already, in times of social injustice, I feel an incredibly strong sense of empathy and feel that it is a privilege for me to be able to turn off the TV or put my phone down and look away from what's going on, because the people who are experiencing this, they can't do that, right? And so I will doom scroll and keep the news on constantly, and it really puts me in a negative headspace, right? Where we're not cut out to consume that much tragedy. And thank God I had therapy this week. So I've already kind of like went through this and unpacked it, which I think is helpful for me to be able then to put it out right now and kind of articulate how I'm feeling. But, my therapist did say this week that like doing that to myself isn't going to change the fact that those people are going through it and I'm not. So making myself feel miserable and guilty isn't going to do anything, but my empathy and my compassion can. I can use those parts of me to affect change. I can donate to charities to those affected. I can share accurate information so people understand clearly what is happening, even though sometimes I don't know that the people who should be reading it are the ones, but worth a shot, right? And in this specific case with these ICE raids, I think that feeling of needing to constantly have it on and be paying attention, I think it's amplified by that connection that I have to the Latino community. And I think that because I'm really big at internalizing and like processing, okay, why am I feeling this way? And I'll think that, but then I also kind of double back and like tried myself, because do I really have a connection because I don't have those lived experiences. I was lucky enough to be born here. I haven't had to live in that fear and desperation and make those decisions that they have had to. Or even whether it be Mexican American or any family who has immigrated here, maybe, farther down the line, who are maybe not in immediate danger of deportation, they still have a closer and more profound sense of sadness over this than I ever will and will ever be able to understand. And so then it feels wrong for me to even feel so deeply about it. And it's just a vicious cycle that just repeats. And I wanted to talk about this, not to say that I have found a way out of that cycle, because I most certainly have not. I am currently, as we speak, sitting in it and struggling with it. But I am someone who needs to articulate and process my thoughts and feelings out loud. That is why talk therapy is so incredibly helpful for me, because I feel like I'm moving them from my brain out, and then, my inner monologue is kind of out here for me to then sift through and kind of make a little bit more sense of, instead of ruminating on, because it's all stuck in here. It's like having a bunch of things in a box and you're moving stuff around and you can't really find what you're looking for. But if you dump it all out, it's going to be a lot easier to organize and see what you need. I just thought of that analogy. I feel pretty proud of that. And honestly, this podcast was made to be a safe space for me to do that, and for hopefully, guests to be able to do that too. And so why would I not take advantage of that platform that I've created for myself? And I think struggling with the race part of my identity will be something that I always struggle with, because there's really no solid or concrete way for me to actively combat it without feeling like I'm intruding on a space I don't belong in. I'd love to learn more about the Latina and Mexican culture and immerse myself in it in some way. But the way that my life has been, I don't really have a way to do that. I don't have those people around me. And if I were to go out of my way to try it, then I always have this little voice inside my head that's saying I don't really have a right to do so anyway, because no matter how much I try to learn or be a part of something, at the end of the day, my lived experience is never going to be the same as theirs. But on the flip side of my existential crisis, I want everyone to take away from this. I guess my purpose in sharing all of this is that, in case we have forgotten this, you never know someone's connection to something or how closely you actually might be connected to something. And if basic human empathy and compassion is not enough, everyone should consider the people in their lives and think about whether or not, when you're liking or sharing things on social media that are racist or perpetuate hate or harmful rhetoric, whether it could be hurting someone that they know too. Because trust me, I have seen things like that on social media, and I think, damn, they don't even realize that there's someone that they are friends with who could be hurt by that. And again, I haven't lived in a way that would make people stop and think about that. And people largely think about themselves anyway. That's human nature. That's why having empathy and compassion should be a given, but it's not. But it still sucks, It doesn't make it suck any less. And what this all really comes down to is just remembering to be kind, to stop and think of others, because you never know everything that might be affecting them. And that's not to say that we need to tiptoe through life, that we can't have opinions and share them, or not speak on anything for fear of offending somebody. That's not what I'm saying. But if it does happen and someone then shares why something might be hurtful to them, or shares hey, you might not know this, but I actually have a connection to X, Y, and Z, being receptive of that and understanding and empathetic. I think as people, we don't want to be made to feel like we did something wrong. But if it was an unintentional harm, and then you're able to hear from someone, maybe like a loved one, why it was harmful, like being receptive of that and understanding of that is going to go such a long way, and honestly just make us better people. Like, I don't think we as humans are meant to just sit and be stuck in the same ways and lines of thinking. We can constantly learn and change and evolve, and I truly think we're only going to be better for it. It's really just trying to live by that golden rule, right? Treat others the way you want to be treated. It's really what it comes down to. If you wouldn't want yourself or your loved ones or your family members to be treated that way, then you shouldn't cheer on a stranger being treated that way, whether you know them or not. I mean, this is why I said I didn't want to fully get into that main topic of immigration, because everything is nuanced. Nothing is black and white in life, but we could all stand to have a little more empathy, no matter what, right? So I don't think I'm gonna do any We're Not Really Strangers cards today, because this episode has kind of been introspective enough as it is. But I would love if you listen to this whole thing. Well, first of all, thank you if you've listened to this whole thing. But if you have listened to this whole thing, I'd love for you to leave a comment if anything I have said has resonated with you, if you maybe learned anything. And please feel free to share this with others too, if you think it might be good for them to learn something or just to kind of hear. But thank you for listening and for really listening. I tried to do my best to not get on a soapbox here or harp at people. I just kind of wanted to share my own experience and the way seeing all of this happening in our country is making me feel, and the things it's making me reckon with in my own life. And yeah, that's what this podcast is for. It's about human emotion and connections and trying to learn from each other, being social, and the human experience of being social. And speaking of social Butterfly is on social media too. We're on Instagram, TikTok, YouTube. So feel free to go give a follow over there as well. But thank you so much for being here and for listening. And I'll see you in the next episode. Bye.